In 1944, the Pacific Ocean was no longer a barrier. It had become a battlefield. Just 2 years earlier, Japan had roared across the Pacific, conquering vast territories with unstoppable momentum. Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, Singapore, Hong Kong. The rising sun seemed destined never to fall, but everything was about to change. Because America was returning, not with a fleet, but with a storm. This storm had a name: the Essex-Class fleet carriers. Massive metal giants that carried the power of an entire air force on their decks. Each one a floating city, each one a symbol of American industrial might. With more than 27,000 tons of steel, the Essex carriers could launch over 90 deadly aircraft. Hellcats, Avengers, and Helldivers, planes designed to destroy ships, shred fighters, and rain fire upon the Empire of Japan. By early 1944, Japan's admirals were deeply worried. Their once mighty carrier fleet had been shattered at Midway in 1942. Their pilots, the best they had, were gone, and the replacements were inexperienced, young, and often terrified. Meanwhile, America was producing new carriers faster than Japan could sink them, one every few months. A carrier armada unlike anything the world had ever seen. Japan's intelligence reported something terrifying. "These carriers are limitless," said one officer. "Even if we sink one, 10 more will replace it." The Empire knew a decisive clash was coming. January 1944, the Marshall Islands. For the first time, the Essex-Class carriers gathered into a single, powerful strike force. Task Force 58, commanded by Admiral Mark Mitcher. Their mission: break Japan's defensive ring, island by island, fortress by fortress. At dawn, curtains of aircraft screamed into the sky. Hellcats cleared the air. Helldivers pummeled fortifications. Avengers hunted ships below. Japan's defenders were overwhelmed, their radar stations destroyed. Aircraft caught on the ground, burning like shattered hope. Witnesses said the sky turned black with American planes. The Marshall Islands fell in weeks. The Japanese front line had cracked. Truk Lagoon, February 1944. Truk was the Gibraltar of the Pacific. Japan's greatest naval base outside the home islands, imperial headquarters, battleships, cruisers, thousands of sailors, a fortress Japan believed could never fall. But America arrived with nearly a dozen Essex carriers. Operation Hailstone began, wave after wave, bombs ripping through steel, ships exploding in fire, pilots screaming orders into radios as anti-air shells filled the air. A Japanese officer later said, "It was like watching our Navy drown in flames." In just 2 days, over 70 Japanese ships and 275 aircraft were destroyed. Truk, once the pride of Japan, was silenced. The Philippines Sea was next. Japan panicked. They knew the American carriers were unstoppable, but they hoped, maybe, just maybe, their new Zero fighters and the surviving elite pilots could turn the tide. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa gathered Japan's remaining carriers, a fleet that was supposed to restore balance. But Japan didn't realize a cruel truth. America's new Hellcat fighters outclassed everything. They were faster, heavier, stronger. And now, Japan's pilots were mostly rookies, while America's pilots were battle-hardened. The stage was set for one of the biggest carrier battles in history. Japan believed they would surprise the Americans, but the Americans had better radar, better communication, better tactics. The hunters were already waiting. June 19th, 1944. The battle begins. Japan's first wave of 69 aircraft lunged toward the American carriers. The response was brutal. Nearly 200 Hellcats launched into the sky. American pilots called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, because the Japanese aircraft, slow and poorly armored, were shot down like targets in a game. One Hellcat squadron returned with a message. "We ran out of enemies." Japan's admiral watched the defeat unfold with horror. He had never seen such destruction. His heart sank with every radio report. "No planes returning. Our fleet is blind. We cannot stop them." Essex-Class carriers kept coming. While Japan's ships were on the run, the American carriers unleashed the killing blow. Dive bombers screamed downward like falling thunder. Torpedo planes roared over the waves. Deck after deck of aircraft launched without pause. Japan's flagship carriers, once symbols of invincibility, were now burning wrecks. The carrier Shokaku exploded in a tower of flame. The carrier Hio vanished beneath the sea. Japanese sailors cried out, "How many carriers do they have? Where are they coming from?" The answer: everywhere. The Essex-Class carriers had turned the Pacific into an American ocean. By nightfall, the rising sun was dimming. Japan was stunned, not just by the number of carriers, but by the terrifying truth. America was only getting stronger. More carriers, more planes, more pilots, and the final battle for the Philippines had just begun. Japan had fought wars before, but nothing prepared them for the unstoppable force now advancing toward their homeland. By mid-1944, the Pacific was no longer a contested sea. It belonged to the Essex-Class carriers. Admiral Ozawa's fleet, once Japan's final hope, was shattered in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. More than 600 Japanese aircraft were destroyed. The Empire's best pilots were gone forever. Japan still had carriers, but they were useless. They had no planes left to fly. To the American commanders, this was the moment they had waited for. The road to Tokyo was opening. The Philippines, the next target. Japan understood the danger. If the Americans took the Philippines, they would cut off Japan's lifeline to oil and resources, so the Empire gathered its remaining warships, gambling everything on one desperate strike. The decisive battle Japan had dreamed of since Pearl Harbor. But dreams do not stop aircraft carriers. Essex-Class decks prepared for war. Engines roared, wings folded open like steel predators. Task Force 38 moved in. October 23, 1944. The Battle of Leyte Gulf. The largest naval battle in human history. Carriers, battleships, cruisers, submarines, thousands of aircraft in the skies. Japan tried to lure the American carriers away, using their empty flight deck carriers as bait. But U.S. commanders understood the strategy. They sent only part of their fleet to chase the decoys, while the Essex carriers stood ready to strike the real threat. Hellcats and Avengers launched relentlessly. Bombs and torpedoes found their targets. The carrier Zuikaku, last survivor of the Pearl Harbor attack, was hit again and again. As flames engulfed the deck, her crew saluted, knowing the age of Japan's carriers was ending. The rising sun flag slipped beneath the waves. What Japan feared. Most Essex-Class carriers did not retreat. They did not run low on planes. They did not run low on pilots. They kept attacking, day after day, hour after hour. America's shipyards were producing more pilots, more planes, and more carriers faster than Japan could count. "The Americans have no weaknesses," said a Japanese commander. The Empire had built its strategy on one belief, that Japan could win early, fast, and decisively. But now, time itself had become America's greatest weapon. The return to the Philippines. General MacArthur stepped onto the beach and declared, "I have returned." Above him, squadrons from Essex carriers protected every step. They dominated the skies, destroying aircraft factories, crippling airfields, and bombing convoys trying to escape. Japan realized with terror, even their homeland was now within reach of American bombs. Civilians gathered in bomb shelters, listening to distant explosions, hoping their city would survive another night. A navy that could not be stopped. By late 1944, Japan's admirals met in silence. One officer finally spoke. The war is lost. Only honor remains. But honor could not stand against steel runways at sea. America had 17 Essex-Class carriers in full combat service. More under construction, more joining the front every month. Wherever the Essex carriers sailed, the Japanese defenses collapsed. Formosa, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, like dominoes, Japan's empire fell. The final message. The Essex carriers drew closer to Japan, their aircraft now bombing the home islands directly. For the first time in history, Japan's skies belonged to someone else. Citizens looked upward, not with pride, but fear. The empire that once shocked the world at Pearl Harbor was now stunned itself. As the flames of war moved toward Tokyo, one truth became undeniable. The Essex-Class carriers had rewritten the future of naval warfare. They were not just ships, they were the instruments of Japan's downfall, and the rising sun was setting forever.